We're live. I'm 2 minutes late. I apologize. So, Friday with Fred, and we're talking about homeschooling, parenting, I don't care, productivity, education, all kinds of fun stuff. Last week, we talked a little bit of AI. So the game is I want to share with you what something I'm learning or thinking or think would be helpful to you, a little teaching thing. And then I want to take questions. So get your questions ready. Do, if you would, say hi and that you can hear me. I don't have a way to verify that exactly. So, so there's a little delay. That's all cool. Here we are in 2023. Homeschooling is abounding. Public schools are struggling, but still surviving. Colleges still are working. More people are suspect of college than they ever been. But I want to talk about something a little more practical. If you have questions, math, reading, learning, memory, dynamics, special learning challenges, all that stuff we love to discuss, is share with you about your own productivity. And specifically, I want to talk to you about procrastination. So, procrastination is a really curious thing to me. In fact, I aim to be an individual who will destroy it forever. So, I've not procrastinated in, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It's been some time. I just don't do it. And I'm going to explain to you a very short version of why that's true. And I want to invite you to quit procrastinating yourself. All right. So this is going to be a little philosophical. So it's okay because my understanding is it's really hard to um, walk crooked, or rather walk straight and think crooked. So most of the challenges you have with your homeschool and marriage and relationships and friendships, etc., are fundamental about the way you think about these things. So, as you're thinking about questions, I want to talk to you about this procrastination topic. Now, to do this, if it'll let me, I want to share my screen. I've changed what I can do, so it may not let me. Oh, entire screen. Let's do that. All right. So, just going to show you. I think I can do a presentation mode. I just threw this together, so it's not the fanciest thing ever, but it'll do. So I want to share with you some aphorisms that I've thought about. So aphorisms are these little summary, pithy statements that share a truth. And once you start understanding things and think them through this way, it's quotes and cliches and stuff. It allows our brain to access them quickly and orient what we're doing to them. So this first one says this: all behavior is goal oriented. So no X behavior, no X goal. What I mean by that is human beings always have some goal, some outcome, some result, something that is motivating their behavior, whether it's avoiding behavior or, I basically think we can either be stuck or we can drift or we can be on course. That's kind of how I look at it. And for each of those, there's a different goal. A drift doesn't really have exact goals, so it's kind of allowing things to push it along. Stuck is you have two competing options, and both are negative. so you're stuck. And on course is you have some sense of where you're going, at least the next thing, the next island, the next mountain peak or something. So I'm going to just say all behavior is goal oriented. So no X behavior, no X goal, which means if I don't see a behavior in you, I can say confidently you don't have that goal, at least for the moment. If you are not eating, then I can say you right then don't have a goal to eat. That's just the way it goes. Number two, if you don't work toward that goal, you don't have that goal. So there's a little different version, but I can honestly say that if I can look at you and I don't see you working towards something, you can say you want it, but I don't see you taking any action, I'm going to argue you don't actually have that goal. It might be called, I'll say this in a moment, a wish or, some preference, desire, hope, dream, Could be anything. But in terms of what actually a goal is and your ability to control stuff, if you're not actually working on it, how in the world could you say you have that as a goal? You say, I'll do it tomorrow. And I'd say, yeah, we'll see. You know, you can say you'll do it tomorrow, but we'll see. And so day in and day out, if you keep saying I have a goal but never act on it. So in your homeschool, I want you to start thinking about that. You have desires, things you want to do in your homeschool, but you don't do them. So I'm trying to invite you to a new level. And, you know, this is about procrastination. So it'd be putting off something. The next piece is this. You are pretending it's a goal if you don't work on it. You are pretending it's a goal if you don't work on it. And I think this is kind of crucial. So if you don't work on it, what you're doing is you're pretending it's a goal when it's really something else, kind of a made up thing. Maybe it comforts you. Maybe it's what you're taught. I have no idea. But I'm trying to invite you to challenge that notion. So next, I'd say if you're not working on it, you need to call it something other than a goal, which is kind of my whole point. And I think that's really smart. Towards not procrastinating, that's going to make a difference. In fact, I'd kind of want to interject that now. What is procrastination? What do you procrastinate on? Just think about that. So I've talked to a lot of people about this sort of thing. And basically, the dictionaries are not as helpful, but when you dig under it, the definitions are basically you're putting off something you believe you should do, and you know if you don't do it, it'll cause harm. It's kind of that ingredient. But I want you to understand that if you begin here, that if you're not working on it, you need to call it something other than a goal. This is a step towards honesty, and that's what's going to cure you of procrastination. So next, and now we're getting to it. It's not procrastination if you don't want to do it. I want you to think about that for a second. It's not procrastination if you don't want to do it. I think that's got to be right. I was talking to some guys today about this morning, unmarried, and we're giving the example of, let's say that there's this girl named Mabel. Mabel was my grandmother's name, and Mabel, you know, one guy wants to ask Mabel out, and the other guy, Mabel's not his type, right? So we have two guys. Both of them are not asking her out. One is saying he wants to, but he never does. And one says he doesn't want to. So one, by the definition, would be procrastinating because he says he wants to, but he's not doing it. And the other is not procrastinating because he doesn't want to, which is the point. It's not procrastination if you don't want to do it. We pretend that the issue of procrastination is not acting. And I'm going to tell you the problem with procrastination is in the wanting. So finally, or next to finally, we get down to this. Procrastination is pretending that you want to do something, misspelled, you don't want to do. And that, you got to add that part, because if it's in the future, you can't procrastinate something you can't have the opportunity to do. So procrastination is pretending that you want to do something you don't want to do. And that is past due. And that's the crux. In fact, it gets to this point. The solution is to quit pretending, and procrastination will disappear. See, look at that thing that you're procrastinating on. And why don't you just be honest and say, hey, I don't want to do it. At least right not now. In the moment you admit you don't want to do it, it's incredibly freeing to your energy. Now, it may be that you say, yeah, but I want to. And I'd say that's golden. Then work on how you can come to want to. And there's more to this than that. But that's the game. So for me, I used to spend so much time exhausting myself in all of February and part of March because my brother would file his taxes on February 1st or as soon as he could. I didn't have to have them to my accountant till March 10th. So I'd spent all of February procrastinating, worrying, burning energy. Oh, I need to do my taxes. Oh, I need to do my taxes. Oh, I need to do my taxes. And then finally I get to about the 8th or the 7th and I do them and ship them out and it'd all be done. I came to this realization that about this, and I went, wait a minute, I just don't want to do them until March 7th. So it moved from being procrastination to planning, right? If you can do that with homeschool, life, whatever you're doing, and start being honest with yourself that you don't want to do it, quit calling it I want to. You know, if you're not working on it, you need to call it something other than a goal, a wish, a maybe. I think a maybe's a great way to go. Just you can have a maybe list, and that's different than a want list, because the want list is stuff you'll work on. So quit pretending, and procrastination will disappear. I don't know why those pages didn't come up pretty like that. All right. Woo, enough of that. So I don't see any comments. I hope like crazy I'm live, but I changed the resource and there's a chance they don't let me do comments. If that's the truth, then it's going to be maybe a little bit shorter program. I have a list here. Nope. I'll have to think that up. So I know there's a delay in here. Here you come. Oh, good. I am live. Praise the Lord. So I need questions for us to talk about things. So in this whole procrastination things, as they're showing up, good. Everybody's telling me I'm live. Great. I really wasn't sure. As you think about questions that you've heard, that you can ask for a friend, ask for yourself, do think about this procrastination piece, about what you're doing, and recognize if you want to do something in your home, then what you need to do is do it and quit talking, like start being honest. And that's how I said I hadn't procrastinated in years, because I quit pretending that I wanted to do stuff I didn't do. I just go, I must want that. In fact, for me, so most of you know, I was a pastor for many years, and I went to seminary and have a doctorate in applied theology, blah, blah, blah. But what you don't know is, so in the Christian faith, there's an understanding about sin. And so we're learning how to get over its effect and sin less and do more righteousness, right? And as I age, I found that easier, mostly because I'm tired. But there was a day in my early life that it dawned on me that I actually liked to sin. I wanted to. And that was revolutionary, because I realized, oh, this is a problem with my wants. And so I started working on how, in my understanding before God, to change the wants I had so everything would change. Well, I'd say on a practical level for your homeschool, quit saying you want stuff and figure out how to really want it. And so really do it. I think that makes sense. Hope it does. I know it's kind of breaking your brain. It's a different way to think, because I think procrastination's a myth. It's just pretending you want something that you don't want. And I kind of laid out a little bit of the case. So questions, what's going on in homeschool? What are people struggling with? I mean, commonly it's motivation and communication and all kinds of fun things. I do have a list I want to share. Well, I think we all run into this sort of thing from time to time. And what we run into is not giving each other slack, and especially our kids. Maybe our kids need to give us slack sometimes. We certainly need to give them. So I so I have this little notebook, and every day I'll write 10 ideas for something, 10 ways to persuade, 10 questions to ask if you're anxious or stressed, 10 mistakes to avoid when you consider the future, 10 burning questions I circle back to regularly. Turns out to be 15 of them. 10 reasons to replace your to-do list with a how-do list. That's another conversation. So I got all these. So this one was 10 reasons to cut others a lot of slack. Okay. And here they go. So this was April 18th. Number one, most people aren't really awake. They're kind of in a hypnotic state. This, I believe, is true. Most people just aren't awake. When I go to a movie, I'll sit in a movie and I'll stop in the middle of it and I'll look around just to remind myself this is how life goes, that most people are just playing a movie or watching a movie called life. And I'm trying to be awake. And we were trying to get our kids to be awake. So 10 reasons to cut others a lot of slack. Most people aren't really awake. Number two, you'd probably be just like them if you'd experienced what they had. If you'd gone through what they have in life or their age or stage or whatever, there's a good shot you'd be like them if you'd gone through the same experiences. It's a good shot. Not guaranteed, but it's a good shot. 3, we're all broken. We need the book. I'm not okay. You're not okay, but that's okay. We need that book. 4, if you don't to them, why should they to you? If you don't give them slack, cut them slack, well, why should they cut you slack? It's only fair. 5, it makes you the virtuous adult in the room. So if you give people slack, cut them some slack, you are kind of the virtuous adult in the room. 6, it might create safety for change. So a lot of people can change if you can create a safe enough environment for them. Amazing studies. One of the famous ones was a schoolyard where they thought it wasn't fair for the kids to be in cages. They had fences, high fences all around the schoolyard like I had grown up. And in those schoolyards, it was that they had a committee or something decided to tear them down so the kids didn't feel like they were in jail or something. And what happened when they tore them down and they went out to recess, all the kids just huddled in the middle of the field and didn't play because they didn't feel safe. Those fences create safety from outside world, from cars, from whatever else in which they could play. So there's a game when you cut people slack, you can create some safety for them so they can change, they can consider a change. Yeah, so if you cut some people slack, that might give them some hope. Try it, spouse, kids, friends. 8, it gives you a break from the stress of judging and fixing everything. According to me. So if you give people slack, you can take a break from the stress of judging and fixing everything. And then 9, it's good practice to act wise over intense feelings. And it is a good practice. So you might have an intense feeling that you're frustrated with somebody, but you can give them slack, and that's really good practice for you acting wisely over your feeling. And number 10, you're probably closer to acting like God than is normal for you. So the way I think about it is when I'm not giving slack, I'm kind of putting myself in the position of the eternal judge. And I don't think that's in my job description. Anyway, thought those might be helpful. All right, so the Price family throughout, I like that. Quit saying you want it or pretending you want to do and start doing it, or put it on the maybe list. Exactly. Perfect. That's exact. It'll change your life. It'll dramatically change your life. I need to write this book. So, because it's like a new level of radical honesty you can get to. And when you're there, everything can change. I mean, a lot of life is just coming to admit the truth. It's amazing. It also frees up your energy because you quit worrying about it. Jim said, putting yourself in the shoes of others when to hold on to. Do you have any thoughts on this? Yeah, it really is. So let's slow this down. Putting yourself in the shoes of others. So this is, it could be empathy. So it's feeling how. I got it. Looks like they fixed it. So putting yourself in the shoes can be an objective thing. So you're trying to think from their viewpoint, right? So you can feel from their viewpoint, you can think from their viewpoint, okay? So one's a frame of reference, one's a frame of feeling or empathy. So putting yourself in the shoes of others and teaching those that find learning a challenge is difficult to hold on to. So any thoughts? So learning is a challenge. So here's what I'll explain. Learning should not be a challenge exactly, because all humans are learning machines, but it becomes a challenge. So humans like to learn. I mean, you see them. We learn to use a fork and get shoes on and go outside or reach things up on a cap. As we grow, we're always learning. But there are two things that are in play when learning happens. And this is important to know from getting into their mindset. One is curiosity, and the other is frustration. So whenever you're learning, that's usually engaged. You're curious, so you're trying to acquire some new knowledge, skill, but it's also frustrating because it doesn't always come easily or quickly. Well, knowing that they're going through that is going to be pretty crucial, pretty valuable. But the other side of it, and I've talked about this on many occasions, is understanding kind of a chart, a grid between competence and challenge. So if you have really high competence and a low challenge, like it's not very challenging to the person and they're really competent, that leads to boredom because there's not enough challenge to engage them. If you have a high challenge and low competence, then what it turns into is anxiety and stress. And so when you look at something like it's a challenge to teach those who find learning a challenge. And I'd say you want to get in their mind and find out, is learning a challenge because it's hard or because it's boring? And if you can get in their mindset or understand it, then all you have to do then is up the game. So if they're bored, they need more of a challenge. That would be a time limit, more problems, better reading, something more interesting and challenging to them. Maybe a slip in another kind of book, right? So that's a challenge problem if they're bored. I mean, that's the nature of that challenge. The other is if they're anxious. So if they're stressed out and anxious, obviously what's required of them is beyond their perceived competence. So you want to back off. If you're making them write 3 pages and it stresses them out, how about 1? Maybe it's not that. You're making them write a story and that's freaking them out. How about just a set of sentences, like 10 sentences about anything? Or it could be 10 sentences, or maybe it's 5 with the word pickle in it, or flower, or badger. I don't know. But writing the sentences would be fine. If that stresses them out, have them just write 25 words, because sentences, you may not know this, are words put together in a sequence. So I would say that's part of the game, is trying to understand where they are, and you're just trying to move them a little every day. You want to start with where they are and then move them a little bit. That's the game. I hope that helps to start. What other questions? I had made a list of questions. In fact, I could do that too. If y'all aren't going to be helpful, but I know you have questions. Come on. Don't be shy. I won't embarrass you. That's not it. Yeah, so I was thinking this might be crazy, but let me show you this. So I'm going to go back to my screen and share it while you're coming up with questions. Oh, good. Glad that was helpful. So I'm going to go to this crazy chat, right? GPT. So this artificial intelligence game, trust me, I've prayed over it. We're protected. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in a question for homeschoolers. So, um, how do I? No, let's just do this. What are the important questions homeschoolers are asking these days? How's that? So, what are the most important questions homeschoolers are asking these days? I don't have access to their thoughts, but here's some common questions. Okay. So, here are the common questions from Chat GPT, right? Let's see if I can just pull these out, copy them, stop sharing, go back to the studio, and see if I can put these in here. So I had, I didn't spell them out like I wanted to. Sorry, gang. But we'll come back to it. So let me come back to this question first. Any thoughts on Ron Paul curriculum? I was thinking of Ron Paul's curriculum today, actually enough, curiously. It's based off the Robinson method, but they have incorporated daily videos, only weekly writing assignments. So it's really, Kenneth, more of my view on curriculum in general. I don't remember, it does look this way. And most of these, whether it's Robinson or whatever, most of us are coming from somewhat of a classical model. In terms of the fundamentals, I would say it's about skill development, a little different than some of these others. Video lessons are fine. I use them. Most anything can be fine. Humans can hear, they can read, they can tactically touch things. And we do all of those. I'm not fond, I've talked about elsewhere about VAC systems, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Learning styles are not quite what they say when you look at the research. Humans have more adaptability. You may have a preference or a sequence, maybe, but you can do them all. So I, honestly, I like any curriculum that is fundamentally encouraging people to develop a skill. Now, Ron Paul's stuff is going to have a little more bias on philosophy, but Robinson does too. And when I say that, I especially would say capitalism. They have some key books in there, some things. Ron Paul, one of his things is being somewhat of an economist or thinking about economies a good bit. But I'm not uncomfortable with most curriculum. Where I get uncomfortable is when it's all fill in the blank and it's all done for you, rather than, I mean, if the blank requires you to figure out something, that's different. But rather than really getting people to show their work and get engaged in the process of having to teach themselves. So I've not been through the curriculum. What I looked at looked fine. I do think the reason Ron Paul's involved is what I was thinking about today, and others, and like me, is I think there's a huge amount of impact long-term homeschoolers are going to have. Now, if we mind our own business and just work and do life, that's a great thing, good citizenship. But I'm also going to tell you, like Christian colleges, their growth has been pretty phenomenal, where colleges are going down, and a lot of that's fueled by the homeschooling. So I think there's a place for impact, but the impact's going to come as we develop these skills, especially around reading and around math and logic and thought, and around writing, communication, rhetoric. So that's kind of what I got. I hope that was helpful. So let's see if I can get down here. So what are the best resources for homeschooling? So these are these questions. Let's see how far they go. Does this scroll? Huh. It only shows part of it, so I overdid it. That's funny. So, what are the best resources? Well, actually, we were just sort of addressing that just a little bit. Um, I'm getting these questions up for you. Just hang on a sec. Another set of questions in there. I'm doing it properly. Okay. So, what are the best resources? How can I make sure my child is learning everything they need to know? All right, that's a great question. How can we make sure our children are learning everything they need to know? And this is where I would say we're tricked. AI is too. So, so when we say no, we usually think knowledge, but there's kind of a know-how component to that. And my thinking is what you're wanting to do is train children in skills. Certainly moral foundation's important, but what are the skills they need for life? And all of them foundationally, if you can stack reading, writing, arithmetic together, that they're intensive and they can read well and they can do math and know why it works and they can articulate and write and that makes them think clearer. Those skills in and of themselves are giving them the ability to learn how to learn. Now, I would say what they need to know is how to take, I think everybody needs to learn to be an artist. Everybody. And what I mean by that is an artist takes a blank sheet of paper or a blank canvas and then draws, I'm saying visual art here, draws something that represents or pictures or entertains or beautifies something in the world. It's a thing. It didn't exist, then it did. It's creative. And that's the game. That's what you want to be doing with your kids. I remember when my son Trip went to University of Texas in Austin, and he's going to study visual arts or studio art, excuse me. And everybody was kind of down on that. And I told him, well, they asked, say, what's he going to do with that? And I said, I don't know. If you can learn to take nothing and make something, I think that's a really good skill. And I meant it. I also knew that if he would pursue studying something he enjoys, then he would really lean into it and get after it. A lot of people are throwing a curriculum that they hate. That's not a good way to go. I'm not saying you don't want to make money. I'm not saying don't be wise, but I'm saying you're better off finding something that you find something in it that's engaging, so that you can learn how to learn and make that always the goal, to learn how to learn. That's what they need to know. When your child can read, write, do math, and knows how to learn how to learn, they're fine. What else they need to know? Well, they don't know the capitals. Really? You know how long it'd take an educated homeschool 18-year-old to learn the capitals? Most of them, you could do it in a day if they're sufficiently motivated. Like if you said, if you'll learn all the capitals, do the test, by the end of the day, I'll give you a whole day off school. And this is all you have to do. They probably would. And if not a day, a week, something, I know, because you can learn once you know how to learn. That's a super question. Thanks, AI. What are the best ways to keep my child engaged and motivated while homeschooling? We talked about that earlier. If you just came on the video here, go back and listen stuff about where I make this symbol and talk about challenge and anxiety and boredom. There's a question down here I really want to get to. So let's see if I can look at it. Didn't quite show it. How do I create a social environment for my child while homeschooling? So that's in there. How do I create a social environment for my child while, and it should say homeschooling. So yeah, so let's talk about that for just a second. How do we create a social environment for our kids while we're homeschooling? Well, first you want to define what you mean by social. You know, I mean, if your child is isolated in his or her room and has stuffed animals and only comes out to get a plate of food and goes back in their room and never talks with you or any neighbor or has no friends, okay, that's a social problem. But when we talk about a social environment, why is the family not a social environment? I mean, it is. I mean, the idea is they need to be with their peers. Well, that's an invented thing. That's not what we've had through history. You've had range. You're with older, younger, all the rest. The young people make older people think there's hope for the future, and the young people occasionally go, "Whoa, that was wise. I could skip that lesson just by listening to what that old person said." So socially, all you're trying to do is get them exposure to different social contexts with people, and those environments are important, but they can be dangerous because you take them into a public school setting that is disruptive and out of control and not very well mannered and doesn't have good supervision. And what you're doing is you're putting them into a context in which they can do poorer. They become like the people they're around. And so that socialization can help kids turn into problems. I've had so many friends that did that. Their kids started going to middle school, junior high, and everybody always says the same thing. Within a few weeks, they come home with attitude, which they don't see in the homeschooling the same way. It's not just hormonal. It's something they catch from each other. My goodness, I remember sitting around with some friends of mine about that age, and we got into a weird discussion about whether boys were strong enough to take our mother in a fight. I don't know why we were thinking about that thing, but somebody started it, and we're a bunch of little thugs in Alabama. So all I'm getting at is, if you think more broadly about socialization, you don't want to socialize them poorly. There's no real magic in what everybody thinks socialization is. It's not like dogs learning to play with dogs, but there is human interaction. And so we found with church and in our context, scouts and art classes and music and neighborhood and friends. And then we had 5 kids and each other, all that stuff of learning how to get along and interact with human beings seemed to work great. It's sort of built in the thing where we're not hermits, we're social creatures. So exposing them to opportunity, I think you're golden. Thinking that's somehow a problem is literally an imaginary story the other side is kind of made up. What other questions? See if I skipped one. Thank you. Thoughts on curriculum. I can look at another one of these. Let's see. How do I assess my child's progress and ensure they are meeting the necessary standards? Yeah, so this is a little bit of a trick, because meeting the standards can be problematical in the early years because kids go at different paces. We were concerned about our child going to school because he had cerebral palsy, and we didn't want him labeled too soon. We didn't want him labeled at all, but kids can do that sort of thing. And so trying to know where they are and where their standards are, it's obvious you can do it through testing, parallel testing. Of course, with COVID and what happened, they're starting to move away from a lot of SAT and other stuff. I don't know how much this is what they call this woke world and who you're letting in, or how much is they found other ways to okay kids that weren't as just test dependent. The truth is, these tests do tell you something. They at least tell you can take a test. And if you're good at test taking and you've learned stuff, it'll tell you roughly where somebody is. So the way we thought about it, though, is a little different. It wasn't so much that we were concerned about meeting necessary standards, because we roughly know those. By the time they get out of high school, they need a certain amount of math, a certain reading level, a certain this, that, and yon. Same with writing. But what we did, instead of being obsessed with those kind of standards, we were obsessed with them improving. So every week and every 2 and every whatever, we're constantly checking, Are you getting better at reading? Tell us back what you read. Are the level of books you're reading, are they more challenging? Are you still comprehending? The math, are you maintaining a 90 or better as you go through more advanced math? If not, we slow you down or maybe back you up and get you to go over it again, a few lessons. So there's that constant check. And math in particular, we wound up taking a test, I think, every week. So roughly you can tell, are they really getting this? That'll give you an indication as well. Writing the same thing. As they continue to write every day, we could ask, are they getting better? Are they getting more complex? Is the story getting livelier? Because if you take your kid wherever they are and then just constantly improve, you're going to be golden, especially if the goal is to develop skills. Because once they have the skills, they're going to be fine. You get to late high school, take a bunch, take the course on how to take the SAT or ACT, take a lot of practice tests and see how it goes. If that, in fact, college is an issue. Quite frankly, if it's not, you're trying to pass high school, that's not a big step. I mean, special needs kids is a different conversation, but getting through that is not overwhelming, whether it's a GED or whether you have your curriculum and okay them. And then they get out and learn a trade or whatever they're burdened to do. So, any other questions? If there are, I'd love to answer them. And if they're not, I'd be more than happy to let you go. Because, I want this to be live. I want it to be interactive. And saying the same thing over and over again doesn't entirely wear me out. But and it's a safeguard. But by the same token, the nuances in your questions are always really helpful. What are the best ways to keep my child engaged and motivated? I said that one. Let's see what else we got. How can I connect with other homeschool families and build a community? There's a common question. So, finding other families and building community is largely a process of reaching out. If you literally Googled homeschool families near me, homeschool co-ops near me, in our context, honestly, we found church to be very, very helpful because a lot of the homeschool families care about this aspect of life. And so as a result, the religious or spiritual part, they tended to collect theirs, in those contexts. So that worked in a rather golden way. All right, I'm gonna give you just a second. You got another question? Shoot it. Otherwise, I would appreciate you, sending this out, taking the share from YouTube or wherever, or your share on Facebook, and let other people know about it if you find this stuff helpful. Most people do, because I don't know that I really am telling you profoundly magical things, but most of us need to find out we're not crazy. So, because we've done this with 5 kids and they're all grown and educated and college graduates, employed, and have houses and kids and da 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 da. We've survived, right? And I can tell you, you're not crazy. It's going to work. Hang in there, right? So Jim asked me, how many books have you written? So let's see. I think I'm at 10. So I've got this new one behind me, Enjoying Problems. I'm not sure if you can see that accurately or not, if it's backwards. But this book is not published yet, but it's just finished. I finished writing some more yesterday, tweaking something. And it's really, I want to develop a problem-solving model for all of us to use on most everything, like a universal model. We do that in project management. They have a model that we all basically know, but problem solving, they haven't done this. There's debate and some old school things, weird idea. Sometimes you smell lavender and think of an idea, or you brainstorm, or you do these different things, and they're not as efficient as we can be in terms of understanding what's going on with problem solving. So I've got this book that's going to kind of promote part of what I do with businesses and entrepreneurs. I help them solve problems. And my experience is you solve problems, your anxiety goes down. But in order to solve a problem, we got to get your anxiety to go down, because like test anxiety, you can know it all and been so stressed that it falls apart. So we'll have that out before long. See if you like it. Anna, if I can get to this. So Anna Mary said, how can I help my teenage son find his gifts? He's almost 16 and just isn't sure what he likes or is good at, and it's causing him some anxiety. Yeah, so the anxiety part is, I mean, the premise would be, if you don't find your gifts, you can't use them. And if you don't use them, you'll fail God and the world and whatever else. I don't know how he's thinking, but I'm just saying, not an uncommon way to think. I resonate with it. I do have some thoughts on how to do this, but by and large, it's really not as much a gift issue. So gifting, depending on what we mean, I assume we mean talents. So like the Matthew 25 is where we get that word from, what you've been given to make use of. A gift is a little different game because there's spiritual gifts and people battle with this. Same with calling. But here's what you do. What do you find enjoyable? What do you seem to have a knack for? And I'd say more importantly, what can you spend a lot of energy on and never get tired, or not easily get tired? There are some books. There's a book called Stand Out that I like, and the book has a test in it, and their method's pretty good. There's a thing called the Colby Cognitive Index, which I had gotten certified in years ago. Write these book in there. I'm certified in Myers-Briggs and some other things. All of these are fine as far as they go, but the problem is we'd have to give your son a unique test that he would pass and nobody else could, because a lot of the game is just discovery. You don't have to know it. He doesn't have to be a prophet. We're all going to learn this stuff. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do, because it's sort of an adventure. What I would say he's wanting to do is figure out what skills he wants to develop, because that combination of skills, he's probably not going to be the best in the world at something. What it takes to do that, the best downhill skier, the amount of energy and time to be the best in the world, to get in the Olympics is one thing, but to be the best. But if you're really good at, if you're good at writing and math, do you know how few people do that? Already you're in a different category. If you're good at reading, writing, and math, that talent stack is pretty amazing. If you get pretty good at editing, that adds something. If you're really good at mechanical things and figure out what's wrong with mechanical things and can read and write, that stack of talents is very powerful. So I would look to motivation and interest, and you might check those two items out. There's another book or test. I think you can get it free, and it's called Sparked. I'm close on that. It talks about your motivation and interest. I'm pretty close. You can look it up. Spark, Jonathan, somebody. I like it anyway, because it's talking about your motivation, how you approach things. Like me, mostly like a scientist, so it describes, and I go, yeah, that's pretty much me. That's what I do. So let's see. Did Colby, see what else I can show? Stand Out. It's a book. That one's good. T says, hyperactive kids. I need help. He is only 7, but cannot focus. His mind runs constantly. Boy, can I relate to that. So we have in our courses. So for subscription of $9.95 a month, you can get 10, 11 courses we have in there. One's on focus, and some of this is hyperactivity. And hyperactive is a little bit of a misnomer, just the context. Like if I put your son out with Daniel Boone, back in the day, hunting deer and going on month-long treks through the wilderness, don't think he would have been seen as hyperactive. However, Betsy, who's really good about sitting quietly in her desk and doing her work, might be very stressed in that kind of environment. So some of this is the environment game. So here's a 7-year-old boy, and you're trying to say, be still and focus. And God wired in him, wiggle and look around. So what you want to do about focus, I'll just give you the starter kit. Focus is about learning to come back. It's not about concentration the way we think about it. All of us are unfocused. Like when we drive, we need to be unfocused so we can look left, right, but we see it coming back to look in the lane. I had my 2 really focused kids were terrible drivers, scared me to death. My 2 really unfocused kids were great at driving because they were tuned into what was going on and they drove by feel. So some of this is just a knack and a talent thing, and you're just caught in the game. I know what my parents did for me in my hyperactivity. One, they'd make me go run around the house, go exercise, go out and play, put some play breaks in there. The other thing they did is they found some things that engaged my mind, some things I really liked. Topics, science, there are different things that I finally found that I could really focus on. But mostly you want to teach him, not get onto him for not being focused, but just say, okay, now come back. And you just keep coming back. And you work on the problem, you just keep coming back. That's the skill he's got to learn that's going to make the difference. I don't know what that was. Let's see what we got here. I find myself frustrated trying to keep him on task. Try not to show it or yell, but it's hard. Right. So that's part of cutting some slack. I mean, like I said, his little body wants to wiggle. But you're wanting to, even with this kind of person, have a baseline. Where are we and how do we get better? So we're trying to teach you how to come back. For you personally, in the frustration, what generates this frustration is what you want. And what you need to recognize is you've been given a 7-year-old boy who is energetic and alive and has testosterone damage on his brain. And he has this ability to jump laterally to things and then get obsessed on something over here that he's not supposed to. And so understanding that that's just sort of how he is. Like when I accepted that my son had cerebral palsy and wasn't going to play basketball and other things, he couldn't walk right, he had some things, then we would say, well, what can he do? And I'm going to tell you, if you'll start there with focusing on, well, what can he do and improve at, rather than what you wish he was like, if you could let go of that, because I'm going to tell you this, you don't know how he's going to turn out. I mean, distractible people are great in triage and in hospitals and emergency rooms because they can be interrupted. Focused people, terrible. Focused person, somebody comes in, their neck's bleeding, they say, I hear your jugular's bleeding, but I'm ankle right now. And when I get through wrapping this ankle, I'll get to your neck problem. But in the meantime, if you keep making noise, you're distracting me. Well, by then they're going to die and the ankle person's not going to appreciate it anyway. So these talents need their environment, but the problem is you're in the process of growth. So great. Awesome. All right. So here we are. We're near to the end. So my kids are having trouble with Old English and Robinson books. Any suggestions? Yeah. Slow down or skip them. Some of it wasn't so much Old English, but I understand the problem. With us, I think it was like, there are 2 things, like the memoir of one of the generals. You about couldn't follow it, but Brer Rabbit and that whole thing, that whole story, the language and the dialect and all was so foreign and tough, it just wasn't worth it. So look, you can add in other books, do other things. I do think it's good practice as they age they do need to read Shakespeare and understand a little Elizabethan stuff. I mean, we don't want to go back and, read ancient Gallic, or it's hard enough with Canterbury Tales. You really have to be older to play with it. But I will tell you this. If you want them reading the books in the Old English, the most important thing you do is have them read it out loud and work on their sounding it out. Because if they'll do that a little bit, read a few pages every day aloud, their brain will start making sense of it. It's just another language. I mean, literally, it's just Elizabethan English is a little different than our English. That's how it works. Let's see. Tay said, tell him his energy is a gift from God once he knows what he's supposed to use. That's right. It is. But he can learn to be still. Fidget toys are usually good for people too, but he can learn to be still, just like shy people can learn to speak up, because this is what you want. You kind of want to think about right hand, left hand. You have a dominant hand and a supportive hand, helping hand. And with all of these things, this energy moving is a great thing in certain contexts, but you can also learn to be still. And people who are still can learn to get up and move their bodies. And people who are quiet can learn to talk. And people who talk a lot, like me, can learn to be quiet. Cha-cha-cha. So it's definitely that kind of balance for sure. I don't know which one was terrible, but whatever we're talking about, I get it. All right, gang, this has been so fun, helpful. I hope you're blessed, and please pass it along, and plan to be there next Friday, Friday with Fred. Bless you.